All right, welcome back to Thinkin'Colors with me, CJLO, on this beautiful Tuesday morning with the rain outside. Obviously, we're all so happy. It's not so bad, though. We're all going to be okay. So I was talking about emotional labor and how, I was starting to make the argument that it was sort of different between men and women. And I wanted to talk about how there's different spheres in which this applies. I think you've understood that when it comes to cooking, women are expected to cook. When it comes to organizing social events, it's, again, woman. When it comes to family, who should remember whose birthday? Who should buy the gift? All right. Gifts, meals, and even in certain respects, sex. There's a lot of expectations on women that I'm not saying that in a perfect world, you don't have expectations on your partner to do certain things, and likewise, you have certain expectations yourself. But what was really interesting for me is, the reaction of sort of women nowadays to these expectations, as well as the consequences of these for men. Huh, Simon? For men? What are you talking about for men? This is a topic about women. Really? You'll find out after what consequences there are for us and why it's so important for us to sort of talk about it. So, for one thing, this work is, in a word, underappreciated. Women are expected to do all the work all the time, and it's sort of like a given that she's going to cook, and then she's going to clean, and then that's it. And the problem with that is that they're not magical beings who are born to do this job. This is something they were told to do, and it's expected of them. And then when they do it, they don't get any sort of recognition for it or any sort of thanks. Of course, I'm talking about general trends here, not specifically your life, your situation. I'm just saying that this happens in general in society. And alternatively, for men, when they help, let's say you have a family party, and when a guy helps to do the dishes and to do the cleanup, it's like, oh, look at him. He's really active and helping out. What a great guy. Whereas if a woman helps the family with the dishes, it's like, oh, well, it's Jenny, it's Mary, it's Caroline. She's just doing the thing because it's family, and she's supposed to do that sort of thing. So already there's different expectations, but it goes further than that. It goes in the sense of, if a woman is a stay-at-home mother, we see that as a very, I'm not sure if in 2017 we'd call that like a super positive celebratory thing, but at least we see it as normal. We wouldn't have unrealistic judgments. Unrealistic. No, that's not the right word. Just like we won't judge that woman too harshly, or we don't judge women too harshly in general compared to before they had to be stay-at-home mothers. Now they have the option, we hope. And if they do choose that, we sort of go like, well, that's a great decision. I'm sure it's working out for you and your partner, and this was done in a good setting. But then we'll go back to men. And what happens if a guy decides to be a stay-at-home dad? And I'm talking from personal experience here, from what I've seen from the people I know, and it's backed up by research that I've read throughout the week. There's this huge stigma attached to that. Oh, you're not going to get a job. You're going to let your wife pay for everything. You're not going to be like a successful manager. Your goal in life is to take care of the children at home. What are you going to do? Wear an apron? Make some muffins? Like, it's ridiculous. It's just not the same response. And it's woefully unfair for both parties involved. So one of the main insights is that, women just don't enjoy that job like we do. Like, we don't enjoy it, but it seems like men have the option to say, I'm just not going to do it. But women don't. And this is very important to understand in reference to the elderly and young children. What do you mean by that, Simon? Well, look, let's say you have a family member who's sick, right? And usually, again, I'm talking about trends. I'm not talking about your personal situation or mine. But usually, if grandma's sick or grandpa's sick, the person who is expected to go to the hospital is whichever woman is in the family, the sister, the mother, the aunt, whatever it might be. And if you ask the men if they say no, that's an option, because then the work falls back on the woman. But here's the important thing here. If the woman says no, since she's the one who's expected to do that sort of work, it falls onto nobody else. No one else takes over the job as a general trend. But not only does this apply to the elderly in situations where they're sick, where the victim of this decision, of this weird interplay where for men it's an option, for women it's an obligation, is the victim of that is not only women, but also the elderly. They're the one who suffers. And likewise for children, for soccer games, for going to parties with their friends, research demonstrates that men have the option to be participatory in that interaction, whereas women have to sort of have the obligation. And again, if women say no, the victims are the children who then don't get to do the activities that they wanted to do. So there's also this level. But then you say, okay, well, Simon, you're just man bashing right now. I'm a guy, I'm a good guy, I try to do my best, I'm trying to do. Well, listen to this, right? This pattern of relationship that we see most often in society, it has some real consequences for us as well, and there's sufficient reason for us to pay attention. Number one, the quality and intimacy in our relationship is vastly different than what it could be, and this applies to both partners. But essentially, to be a caretaker kills an aspect of intimacy and an aspect of sexuality that if your partner feels like their emotions and their work is valued by you, and you not only help, but you're an active participant in the work done around the house, and you actively participate in, remembering the dates of events. You're actively participating in planning weekly meetings with the friends of the family of the relationship or whatever, buying gifts, taking care of buying the food, cooking it, doing the dishes, all that sort of thing. It leaves place for your partner to feel more appreciated in general, and this helps the relationship be on more solid ground. But also, that's what's been the problem for all this time, right? For all these years, women do a specific part of the work, and men do another part. Cool. But since the job of a woman, the emotional labor that we've been talking about, is doing all the social activities and remembering all the dates, well, what do you think happens when people divorce? When the relationship breaks down? Well, what happens is that the woman fares so much better. She's so much healthier as a result because she has this network of friends and family members that she's been cultivating, and she's been growing through her various tasks throughout the years. So she's doing well after divorce. She's doing better in general. Whereas compared to the men who, in comparison, sort of lost all of his social circle, all of his social resources, because all of it has been done by his partner, and he's sort of left after 30 years, 10 years, 15 years, doesn't matter, like asking himself, well, what the hell, what do I have now? What do I have left? And you need to build that from scratch. And that's very, very difficult to do after you haven't done it for 10 years. It's not like riding a bike. These sorts of work, and that's the interesting part about emotional labor, is that there isn't a task in particular that you can point to and be like, that's the one. That's the most important one. That's the one that everybody has to do. No. The way to understand emotional labor is to see it as a agglomeration, a group, a whole bunch of different tasks that are individually small, but collectively represent a huge social glue that keep people together. It doesn't matter if one time you forget to buy a card for your best friend and you don't really throw a party. That your relationship is going to be okay. But if over 10 years you can't think of a single time that you wish that person happy birthday, you never throw parties, that's, compared to if you do, is a huge tax on your friendship. And that applies to the family, that applies to the children, that applies to everybody surrounding you. So it's sort of a small, regular series of tasks that are done, and for a woman to only do them has consequences for them. They feel underappreciated. They feel resentment on average towards their partner for having to do all this work, not being appreciated, and not sharing the roles in the house. And it has consequences for men. We lose our own agency to build our own relationship, to be emotionally healthy in that context, which leads to negative consequences during and after the relationship. Another example that I read about was about diabetic men who leave the cooking to their wives or partners for years and years and years. They don't want to think about, they don't want to touch, they don't want to buy anything, they don't want to cook their food. And then what do you think happens when the relationship ends? No skills for cooking, no skills for knowing what to buy, the sugar content of everything. And this is huge emotional labor. This is a lot of thinking and time and stress spent on something that's for your partner. So So that's what I wanted to talk about. That's what hit me a lot when I think about my old relationship. And if you want to go discuss with me certain ideas, you can go on Facebook, my page Thinkin'Color, and also send me an email if you want at thinkin'color@outlook.com. What touched me personally about this topic was I've always been the guy to offer my help, but most often, but I've never been the guy to be part of the labor, to be a laborer, so to speak, right? So there's a huge difference between going home and asking, hey, do you need help with anything? Which means that you consider that it's the other person's responsibility to see whatever situation you're in, the house in this case, and judge whether or not there needs to be something done, and then take the decision to tell you if it needs to be done right now. That is all done by one partner. And if your attitude is to ask, hey, do you need help on anything? You're leaving all that work and all that mental work to your partner. Whereas if you come home and you go, this is my house as well, I'm just going to take initiative to clean and to do everything by yourself, well, then your partner is going to be equal to you in that sense. And that's where emotional labor starts to come into play. You need to see things as not, you do this, I do that, unless it's discussed and it's, that's the deal you have. But you need people, I feel, especially myself, need to start seeing emotional labor as a shared thing between men and women, that we see both as active participants as opposed to one is an accessory and the other one is a subject that decides everything. All right, it's 9:30. Let's go on our second musical break. When we come back, we have Mathias Gréhet, coordinator for Le Pas de la Rue, a shelter for help for people in precarious living situations who are 55 and older. We're going to be talking about this in a few minutes. But first, we're going to be listening to two different songs. The first one is called Revolutions by Set the Whale. It's a nice little down-tempo electronic song. And the second song will be by Skylar Fry, Man is Strange, right here on CJLO. Thank you for being here.